Hey guys, in this video we are going to make a silhouette applique, personalized silhouette applique. Now in order to do this you have to have the most basic level of Stitch Artist, so we can get away with just having Stitch Artist Level 1. And you need to have a picture. So in this example we are just going to use a stock image so I can show you how it works, but for your project, you're probably going to want to have a picture of someone you know, like probably a kid, a baby, I don't know, somebody important in your life. So let's take a look at my picture. I have it downloaded, and here it is right here. Okay. Couple things about this picture. This picture is easy to work with because it's on a nice clean background. The head shape is cut off a little bit, but that's okay. I think I can work with it. Yeah, and it's a nice clean profile shot. It doesn't matter if it's facing left or right because we can flip the image. What I'm going to do is get this into Embrilliance. I am going to screenshot it. Actually, probably the better way of doing this is to go back to Embrilliance, and this is a long file name, but I can remember it. And when you have Stitch Artist Level 1, you're going to have this little button here, which allows you to start creating designs. And if you have Stitch Artist Level 1, you will not have all of the options that you see here because I have up to Level 3, but you will have this image button here. Now I'm going to click on that, and then I will navigate to my downloads and find that image that I downloaded right there. And it's probably going to come in pretty huge. This is a fairly high resolution image. I have my grid on, which tells me the size of my image. Each square, I have my grid set up to be 1-inch squares right now, and that's just something you can set under your preferences. So my head here is about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 inches by 8 inches. If I were going to applique this, I would want to think about my final finished size. Let's say I was doing a quilt of grandchildren, or maybe kids in a preschool. This was an auction project that my sister did years back, where she took all of the kids at the preschool and she did all of their profiles, and she did it by hand, but she appliqued their profiles on a big quilt. It was really cute. Anyway, let's just say that I want my finished piece to fit inside of a 6 by 6 inch square. Okay, so I'm going to take my image and I'm going to scale it down. Now I don't want to distort it, so if I grab the corner it should scale proportionally. And let's just get that head to be within, I said 6, right? So that looks like 5. That's about 6, I think. Okay. Now, remember I said if we don't like the orientation, we can flip the image. If I jump out of create mode and go over here, there we go. Now, actually, I don't like it flipped that way. I'm going to bring it back, but that's how you could flip the image if you didn't like the orientation. All right, the next step is pretty easy. You may want to lock the image so it doesn't move around on you, and that's just this yellow button up here. Next, I'm going to jump back into create mode, and I'm just going to create a shape around the head. Now, if I was doing a whole bunch of them, I would want to like end the base. You know, how are you going to cut it off at the neck? I would want to be consistent about that. So that's just a creator choice. I'm going to choose this first button here called draw with points, and then I'm going to zoom in a bit, and I'm not going to be overly picky about, and I'm going to pan down using my space bar. That's a shortcut for the pan. I'm not going to be overly picky about getting this perfect the first time out. So I'm just going to start, and whoops, there's already a point on there. I didn't realize that. Okay, I said undo because I want to start from scratch. Let's go back, draw with points. Okay, and like I said, I just when I'm drawing with points, I just try to pick the areas where I see a change in curvature. Now I kind of want to get some of these wispy pieces, but remember with applique, it's going to be a little, you don't want to go too fine detail-y for the applique, but that And we'll just imagine that the head ends here, and I can fix that. That looks ridiculous, but I'm just picking, you can see where I'm clicking are just on points where the curve seems to change. Okay. Again, this is not perfect, but by default, it's putting down curve points. So the only areas where I'm going to want to make changes is where I want more of a sharper transition. Now, when I get close to my starting point, then I just click on the little tomato here, and it's going to close my shape. So this is not bad, but I want to make some adjustments. So let's just go around the circle here, and this is kind of wonky here. If I just click and drag, I can adjust my anchor point. The anchor point is the point on the curve, and the handles are the points that extend from the curve, and those handles control the amount of curvature. Now, my picture's cut off, so I have to imagine what the back of the head looks like. Again, take a better picture than this one, and this is kind of extreme, this wispy stuff that I did down here, so I'm going to just kind of bring it in a little bit. And if I don't want that to be, might not work so well for applique. If I don't want that to be curvy here, I can click on that button and right click and say, let's make this a cusp. A cusp is different from a curve because you can take your handle points and kind of make that a little pointy. So let's bring these guys in as well, and do something kind of similar. I think I'll make this a cusp as well. Whoops, I'm clicked on the wrong one. This is the one I want this to be, the cusp. And then I get kind of a little wispy detail in the back there. And it's not perfect, but that's kind of pointy. Looks a little bit like a little vampire child, and we don't want that. It's a sweet kid. So I'm just going to make some adjustments. Maybe we have the head and with kind of a nice soft curve at the bottom. So we'll kind of bring that down, and whoops, I didn't mean to do that. And I feel like we need to have more of a end point down there. So let's turn this into a cusp as well. Cusp. And if I wasn't clear before about the difference between a curve and a cusp, you can move these handles independently, which will give it a pointier shape. Okay. All right, I'm pretty happy with everything right now. Let's turn this into an applique. Right now, it's just a line, it's just a vector shape. All we have to do to turn it into an applique is to select the line here in our Object Explorer and click on the applique button. And by default, it's kind of weird. Embrilliance does this blanket stitch as the default applique, but let's say we just want a typical satin stitch. So we'll change that. And by default, it does 3 millimeters for a stitch width. For me, that's a little bit too narrow, so I typically change it to 4. And we're getting, you know, we're capturing the detail of the face. I don't like this right here. Let's make this a little bit softer. And again, this is a little bit too prickly for me. So I'm going to zoom in. We can use the navigator tool to zoom into this area down here and really make that a little bit less weird. Okay. Still is a little bit weird. It's a little bit sharp. Maybe we don't want it to make, let's just change that back to a curve and see how that looks. I don't know about that. I'll go back to a cusp. All right. So it's a little bit of a softer cusp. So we'll zoom out a little bit, and we'll see what our, and you know what, this feels like it should be a cusp too, because it's kind of a cusp on the other side. We want to make it balanced. Oh, I already made it a cusp. Okay, well that's good. Let's stitch it out and see how it looks. And we'll check the size first. The overall size is 5 7/8 and by 6 3/16. I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller. So I'm gonna, I did Command A to select all. Actually, I did. And then I am going to go back to regular mode here, and let's make this about 90%. And because this lock button is on, it'll scale it proportionally. And now my size is 5 5/16 and 5 5/8. Perfect. Before we go and stitch this out, I want to take a look at one setting, and that is my applique setting. If I select the applique component in my design here, I have an option to have it do an extra row of stitching to tack down my material. So by default, let's get out of this. By default, we'll go into stitch preview. You see I have just one outline stitch there, and then it goes right into the satin stitch. I like to have two outline stitches, one for placement, the second for tack down, and then the third is the final satin stitching. So in order to add that third round of stitching, you want to click on this material button right there. And now you can see, if we go to stitch preview, that there are, it's very subtle, but we have two different colors here. The placement stitching, the tack down stitching, and finally the final satin stitching. Okay, now that we have it that way, I'm going to save it as my PES file. So I'm going to save my stitch and working file, my working being the BE file and my stitch file being the PES file that my machine can read. And let's try stitching it out now. Well, here we are. We are going to stitch out our silhouette applique. I have my linen floated on some sticky back stabilizer, and I'm getting ready to stitch out my first round of stitching, which is going to be the placement stitching for the applique fabric. Okay, so here we go. As you can see here, the placement stitching is done, and now we need to lay down our applique fabric. Okay, I have my applique fabric over my placement line, and I'm going to start my next round of stitching. As you can see, the tack down stitching is done, so I'm going to remove my frame from the machine and trim around this tack down stitching line. As you can see here, the trimming is done, and now I just need to do my final satin stitching. But you know what? It kind of looks okay like that. Another way of doing the applique would have been to do the second round of stitching as a bean stitch and then just leave a raw edge. But in this case, I've set up the file to do a final round of satin stitching. So let's just go ahead and do that and see what it looks like. Well, we are done stitching, and now we have our lovely silhouette applique. Looks great. As you can imagine, this would be awesome to have just a whole collection of kids with different silhouettes on some kind of quilt or wall hanging or something like that, or even just grandchildren silhouettes on pillows. So let's take a closer look. Now it's off the machine, and it looks really good. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you're wondering how I got these cool embroidery frames, they are easy frames, and I will link you to my promo in the video description, and you can get a discount if you'd like to have some of these frames for your multi-needle embroidery machine.